Hello and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I am Amanda Razani, and with me today I have Ryan Johnson. He's the CPO at CallRail. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. Can you share with our audience a little bit about CallRail and what services you provide?
Sure. So CallRail is almost 15 years old. It started originally as a call tracking company. And what that means is really focus on tracking online to offline conversions for small, medium businesses that rely on inbound phone calls as their primary lead source. Um, so in simple terms, we all utilize Google and now maybe OpenAI and some of these other searches. We look for those businesses. And as soon as we find them, a lot of times we place those calls, and that's what CallRail thankfully attributes to all that marketing spend that happens digitally. Whether that's on Google or social or beyond. And so that's how the company started. Kind of fast forward to today, we've taken that other steps further from a lead engagement platform to focus on what's actually happening during the conversation. So conversation intelligence. So being able to analyze utilizing AI. How did the conversation go? Simple things like sentiment, summarizing it. What are the next best steps? Helping the company with like auto generation of text message and email follow up. And then most recently, we just launched our voice AI product to help our customers make sure that they never miss a lead. So if it's after hours or overflow or lead qualification, we can lean on AI to basically make sure that revenue gets captured and never gets lost.
Wonderful. Well, that's a good segue into our topic of the day, which is how AI can benefit small businesses and why it should be top of mind
Yeah.
this year. So, can you share a little bit about you work with different business leaders? Where can AI most help small businesses?
That's a great question. I think first off, it can be very overwhelming, right? For small and medium businesses. They have a lot going on. A lot of the owners wear multiple hats. They're the marketer, they're the owner, they're the person actually doing the work. So I think really the biggest unlock is how do you use AI to fill those gaps? We know hiring people is really tough to get them trained up and have all the context. Um, and so, what I say from a more generalized standpoint is where can AI solve the gaps that you've probably had for many, many years? I think a lot of times companies focus AI in solving new problems. Guess what? There's a lot of like legacy problems that small, medium businesses have, like having enough people to answer the phone during a peak, part of the season or at 6 o'clock at night. You know, uh, the ability to have something interact with customers that may not be on traditional hours that your business may be on, or just being able to handle things like triage and lead qualification up front. We know a lot of these businesses can get spam calls and people selling things to them, and so if you think of time as that commodity that's really important, I think AI can help multiple ways, whether it's front of the house with like conversational AI helping, or even like kind of post um, say analytics is, of all the things that are happening in your business, how can AI do things in a much quicker fashion so you can get to the data that you need versus spending all the time, manually doing this stuff. I think it's been a really big unlock for a lot of these businesses.
So, I think preparation is really important before any sort of AI implementation. So, what's your advice as far as what are the first steps when it comes to choosing what's the most important problems that they want solved and how to find the right solution and then the implementation phase?
Yeah. So I always say start small, right? I think right now a lot of times, if you read on a daily basis all the new innovation, you can kind of go to the nth degree of like I can solve this, I can solve this, I can do that. Um, where it's just like pick a very narrow thing so that you can get comfortable with that. And learn from it, because the most important thing about AI is it's not this like light switch that this happens. You actually have to invest time into it from a lot of different angles. Um, Certainly businesses that help reduce that time, that's what CallRail kind of focuses on. We've been like a self-service business since we started because, again, we got to make it easier for small, medium businesses. I think when looking to partner with companies is like, how can they get that time to value down as quickly as possible? And some of these things can be really complex and overwhelming, just setting up an agent, like where do I start and how do I make sure it does the right things and those types of things. So my advice is start small and also know that you have to invest some time to make it a good representation of your company or do what it needs to do. And I think the last thing I would tell businesses is um, figure out what your expectation bar is. I think a lot of people read in the market, hey, AI is, perfect and it can do all these things magically, and it can, but relate that back to human. If you're kind of comparing it to human performance, even on basic things like transcription or summaries, don't go out of the gate and say AI is going to be 99%, accurate and precise. You may have to fine tune it to get there. And I think over time it will get better as these new models come out. But I think giving yourself a realistic expectation is really important too, because I think a lot of folks just shoot way beyond that. And then they get frustrated and then they say, well, I'm not going to use it. And so I think it's really just kind of defining those success metrics before you dive into implementing any new technology or tools.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how big a problem is AI acceptance and adoption still within businesses?
I think it varies, and you'd be surprised, and it surprises me all the time if you look at data, especially for the smaller businesses and their ability to adopt it. It varies by vertical and industry, and I think some of them that you would assume would be hesitant are the ones that are diving, feet first, and you kind of see it all over the place right now. I think the stats, though, every single month, it's like SMBs or businesses, it's like was at 30 and 40 and 50% utilize AI in some way. I think behind the curtain, you don't really know what that means. Are they just playing with, Chat GPT or Perplexity or Anthropic, or are they actually truly implementing new technology into their process? On the flip side, you see, especially at the enterprise level, like all the headlines, 90% of AI projects fail, right? Like these big, kind of attention grabbing headlines. So I think you see it kind of all over the place right now. It's so new, it's moving so fast. Again, I think for any company, it's kind of focusing on realistic expectations, onboarding, investing into that to make sure that it's successful. But it's all over the place. And I've tried to do my own research to say, well, what if you went into rural America and this city, like, there's no way like your customers would interact with AI. And then someone disproves me, the very next day where it's like, oh, Domino's released their, AI order taker and it performs the best in the middle of Iowa. And you're like, what? That makes like no sense whatsoever. So I think that makes it fun and exciting, certainly where I sit in my role. But also very challenging because we just don't have enough data yet, and it's just moving at lightning speed.
So, in regard to that, those headlines, 90% of AI projects fail. So how do we ensure that that's not correct and doesn't play out in that way? What advice do you have once it comes to that AI implementation stage to ensure that they have success?
Yeah, I think setting like goal expectation setting is really big out of the gate. I think that's part of the problem. I think a lot of companies and people just react like, okay, I got to implement AI. What's truly the goal that you're going after? Picking the wrong goal, like the wrong ROI is a big piece of that, right? People go into this and say, well, I want to reduce, increase productivity by 30%, or I want to do these things. Sometimes it's really hard to measure. And sometimes they blow out the scope of all the different things they're trying to measure and they implement too many things at once. I also think the piece of adoption is I hear a lot of companies, it's just like if you don't have buy-in from leadership team, executive leadership team, other individuals, and that even goes down to the smallest companies, like if you're trying to implement AI and the business owner doesn't want to do it, like it's probably going to fail, right? So I think picking those goals and being reasonable about them, also while making sure you have buy-in to what those goals are. And I don't think it's those ideas are not novel. I think it's for like any technology project, AI or new process or any of that type of stuff. You have to do it. I think again, people get too enamored with AI and they think it just is the magic button and it solves it. And just like any other thing in the past, some of those things don't go away because of its AI. It's actually more important to track the progress and what your actual goals are before you ever decide to implement it in your business.
So we see AI advancing quite rapidly. What do you envision is the future? Give some use cases that you imagine might be popular in the next year or so.
Yeah, I think 2025 was certainly, I would say, the, get prototype and show what it can do year. And even the smallest companies can do it really quick, and that makes it exciting, and it gives buyers lots of optionality out there. I think over the next couple of years, especially when it comes to like agentic AI and AI agents, how they communicate with each other efficiently, I think is going to be a big deal. I think a lot of the initial implementations were this agent has this context that can do this. But now with things like MCP and just other context and knowledge sharing, it becomes really powerful, right? So another agent can talk to another agent over here, and that agent specialized, so the architecture and the setup isn't as burdensome. So I think the interconnectivity of how these things interact will be really important on the business level, but also on the consumer level. If you think of comment, with Perplexity coming out with their browser, and you kind of have these agents on the side that can help you as you browse. I think my hope is that they really start to pan out and help out, right? As us as consumers, it really goes to that next level where I hear anecdotes of people that been able to do amazing things like plan their vacation and do all this type of stuff. But when you get into it, it can be really difficult. Like if you didn't experience it and you're like, how the heck did these people over here do this whole thing when I'm doing this and it's not working out in the same way? It didn't find the best prices, and it didn't give me the exact information. So I think the sense of like a consumer co-pilot in your browser will change search. I think that goes to a lot of the like AEO and GEO, the next gen of SEO. I think that will continue to take off because none of those LLM search has done anything paid yet, but we think it's coming. We thought we saw OpenAI do a little test and they pulled it back. We don't really know for sure. But I think those are the things in the next year or two. Search will be redefined and hopefully be better for all of us as consumers connecting with businesses. And I think overall, I think the models will just continue to dramatically get better, which I hope, because a lot of the stuff that happens today, it's a little bit of a black box. A lot of this technology is all built on 3 or 4 players. And when it, hallucinates or it has a small issue, every time they update the model, it seems like those get less and less prevalent. And so I also hope that just in general, those kind of, why did this agent decide to say this out of the blue without any prompting? Like, I hope those things will continue to go away where, it will just work way better than we even thought.
It will be interesting to see what unfolds. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the other one, that I go back and forth on, but any of the AI robot stuff, this whole concept of, it helping out either in the workforce or in your house. It's kind of interesting because I feel that's the one that's going to take a little bit longer, we just don't have the data sets of like human touch to be able to train these things in different types of things. It's also exciting one for me as well to say, okay, where does this go, which is completely outside of the box that you and I are in right now on our computers. So I think that will be another one. How fast we go, though, that's like the big question mark for me.
Yeah, I'd love to be selected to be a physical trainer of a robot in my house. Try to train it to do all the different chores, wash
Yeah.
dishes.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you have like iRobot that just went bankrupt with the Roomba, and you're like, how does that happen now? I was waiting for like the next Roomba that would, fly around the house and be able to mop and vacuum and do everything. But I guess we'll have to wait for that.
All right. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
For me, the biggest thing is, I think, just start small, start somewhere. Don't be afraid of it, and just learn. I think a lot of people don't want to miss the boat, and the train hasn't left the station, the boat hasn't left, but it's coming. And so, in order for you to be a part of the change that will happen in many different ways, just figuring out little ways to continue to understand and utilize it in your business and your personal life. I think that's the biggest thing to me. It's just little bits all the time. And then over time you'll get comfortable and be a pro as we all go through this together.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you to our audience. Share what was the most interesting in the comments. Where do you envision AI going in the coming year? All right. And until next week, have a great day.